I know a good majority of you very well. Some of you I have not had the opportunity to meet, so I would like to introduce myself. My name is April Reed Cruz, and I am co-CEO here at Reed Financial Group. And for those of you who know me well, you know that it is no secret that technology is not my forte. It is not something that I enjoy. That is what I delegate to my wonderful spouse and colleague, Daniel Cruz. He handles all of that for us here at Reed Financial Group. But if there's one thing that came out of 2020, it is certainly that we were all forced to step outside of our comfort zone with technology. And probably all of you have experienced that to some degree. Whether we wanted to or not, we stepped into a very advanced technological world. And we had to do things that maybe some of you had never done before. Maybe you had to start utilizing some online banking features and other things that you'd never utilized before. We have more of our clients on social media now than we ever have before. We have a great time engaging with you there. And our speaker today, I will spend just a moment introducing him, and I'm just going to give the floor to him because I don't want to waste a moment of his time. Mr. Joseph Tollison is a fantastic speaker, and I can hands down tell you he is the only person who I have ever had give a presentation on technology that I actually thoroughly enjoyed. So I feel very confident that you will enjoy this presentation today, that you will be able to take things from this presentation that you're going to be able to implement. And Joseph is a good friend of Reed Financial Group's. He's been retired for over 30 years and he's got the 30-year background, over a 30-year background in the information tech industry. He is a retired senior information security officer for the state of Georgia. And during his career, he protected millions of state and federal funds from cyber terrorists. He has numerous certifications from Microsoft, the Computing Trade Industry Association, the Cyber Terrorism Defense Analysis Center, and he also received training from the Federal National Security Agency in cyber terrorism interdiction. He earned the Global Information Assurance Certification from the SANS Institute, and he is also an Associate Disaster Recovery Professional with the Disaster Recovery Institute International. He taught information technology courses at institutions including Augusta State University, Berry College, and Georgia Perimeter College. He has been a satisfied client of Reed Financial Group for several years, and it's worth noting that he wrote this bio and we did not. If you have any questions, if you would just put those in the chat feature, we will handle those at the end today, but you don't have to wait to type those in. So as you think of them, type those in the chat feature. Joseph's going to talk to you about implementation and how you can use practical steps to protect yourself. We're going to provide you with a link after the webinar. You actually already have it for those of you who have the handout that he was so kind as to provide to us. But we would encourage you to complete that quiz once we're done today, and we have a fun little incentive for doing so. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Joseph Tollison. Thanks for joining us, Joseph.
Thank you for that introduction. I haven't actually been retired for 30 years, but I did spend around 30 years in the information technology field. Welcome to everyone, the distinguished participants that we have today. Very glad to have you with us. I hope that in the amount of time that we have, which is, as you well know, not nearly enough time to cover in great depth any of the subject areas that we're going to cover. But we're going to hopefully give you some information and training that you can use in your everyday life, because as April said, today, more than, in my mind, ever before, there are so many people using computing devices at home. And we'll talk more about that as we go along. I would like to cover what we in IT call the attack surfaces. Those are avenues that are used against you and me on our computing devices to take over our machines and to gather our personal data. And typically these bad actors want to use that against us. They're not doing it simply for fun. They are going to try and make a living off of really our mistakes. And the way to minimize the amount of mistakes that we make online is obviously training. IT leaders in all areas, businesses and government, realize that training the end user is the most important. It doesn't matter how many countermeasures that we use electronically to stop these bad actors from trying to get information. We are the number one way to stop these things from happening. So whether you happen to be a person who actually is doing teleworking, you're an information worker and you are spending time at home, or you're just like I am now for the last 8 years, retired, and yet so much of our environment and our lives today are intertwined with computing devices. We want to be able to make sure that we are vigilant and we're paying attention to what we're doing online. So that's what I'd like to talk about. I've got a slide here. Hopefully you can see that. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you what comes to mind when you're looking at this picture. Now, to me, it looks like security. It looks like whatever is behind that door is valuable. What I'd like for you to do is take the notes that hopefully you've printed out, turn it over on the back where it's blank. What I'd like for you to do is to draw a line from left to right. Now, while you're doing that, I want to remind you that my art teacher in college told me that no human being can draw an exactly straight human line. So if yours is kind of wobbly, don't worry about it. But now that you've got that line drawn, I'm going to give you one of the underlying foundations that we're going to be talking about today. On the left-hand side of that line, I want you to write the word convenience. And on the right-hand side of that line, I want you to write the word security. This is a continuum. And I think this picture of this locked door brings that out very well, because I think you would agree with these statements. One is that whatever's behind that door is pretty secure. And on the other hand, whatever's behind that door is going to be pretty inconvenient to get to it. So as we go through today and this amount of time that we have to spend together, keep that in the back of your mind that a lot of the things that we're going to talk about, in order to obtain more security, we're going to give up some convenience. And I think that will be cognizant or aware to you as we go through this. As April said, I've been in this business for about 30 years. And I was in the business when personal computing was new. It was a revolution. It was like the Industrial Revolution that happened in the 18th and 19th centuries. It's changed our way of life. It's, however, been long enough that now the things that we used to get totally excited about in terms of technology has just become another facet of our everyday complex life that we live here in the 21st century. And we sometimes take that for granted. Our brains adapt to the omnipresence of computers and tablets and smartphones. In fact, it's scary when I count how many of those devices are in my own home. And so it's blended into our world without as much thought as we once gave it. It's similar to the experience that we've all had when we moved our living quarters. And if you'll think, I'm sure every one of us has moved. We've gone from a familiar place to an unfamiliar, new home, apartment, whatever. At first, we're cognizant of every sound and smell, garage door opening and closing, the water running, when the air conditioner kicks on and turns off. But we presently become familiar with those sounds when we move, and eventually we rarely notice them. Our brains can only give so much attention the tons of stimuli that it's received every moment, every day. So as you focus on my presentation, for example, you're probably not realizing the feel of your clothing on your skin. You know, is something too loose or too tight or binding a little bit? How about temperature? Where you're at is a little too warm where you're at, or too cool? Maybe it's right. Is it some pain in your body that you haven't been paying attention to right now? Is there a sound in the background that you haven't noticed? Well, as I've said those things, I would wager that you began to notice those as I mentioned them. And it's because our brains, our minds are fed so much information that only a small portion of it is cognizant to us in our conscious minds at that particular time. And the point that I'm trying to make here is that the emails that we receive, are we quite as evaluating those as we did perhaps in the past? Those hyperlinks that we see, we give a thought as to whether we should click on that, where it's going to take us, going to be something that a bad actor has placed somewhere to cause harm to our computing devices. It's so commonplace and prevalent today that we need to take a step back and we need to realize, well, let's talk about some things that bad actors are using against us. Let's be a little bit more careful in our approach to the technology that we take for granted. And I think as we go through here, hopefully we'll be able to give you some insight on those kinds of things, and you'll be able to be a little bit more cautious. Today, in this environment, as April said, tons of work is being done at home. Our information workers are working at home more than ever before. And we're part of that group because it's hard to differentiate between someone who's working at home to do business work and someone who's working at home on their checking account, or you're checking the balance in your savings account, or you're checking to see how much money you've gone over your budget with that charge card that you have. So we are now part of a huge, rich target for people that want to take advantage of us. Businesses, they typically have a lot of IT. They have firewalls, they have all kinds of protections that they use to protect their workers, but those workers aren't in the office anymore. They're at home. So here we are sitting at home. Of course, I'm not sure, I kind of noticed this picture after I used it, but is that guy asleep? I'm not sure. But let's pretend he's working at home. So because we're not behind a particular corporate firewall, or we're not going to necessarily be in a business setting, in a business, in a building that's being protected by IT people. Make sure that we know what to look for. It's interesting that recent research has shown that even after COVID is over, more than 75% of people want to continue to telework. In fact, 92% of people over the age of 51 want to continue to telework. Now, I'm not sure if that says we're spending a lot of time watching clothes while we're doing our work or what, but even in young people aged 18 to 31, 56% of those people want to do that as well. So this is not something that's going to change anytime soon, according to IT people. This is going to be something that we will be in the middle of for quite a while. A sea change in the way that work is done. And I think we're going to continue to see that. So it's impressive upon us that we make sure that we're careful on our computing devices. The best countermeasure to threats that we face today is, of course, training, because almost always the end user is the weakest link. They're the person who's going to click unknowingly on a hyperlink. They're going to open an attachment. They're going to say something on social media that's going to give someone who wants to take advantage of us an entree into our system. Now, the most threats come from email. It's called phishing, P-H-I-S-H-I-N-G. Phishing is some bad actor is trying to get you to do some action. It's going to allow them to insert some software onto your machine or take over your machine to use it for nefarious purposes, or to be able to read the information that's on your machine and use it against you. Most attacks like that come because we're not trained to be able to think about it, take a pause, and think about what's going on in the emails that we receive. I've got an example that I'd like to share with you, a couple of emails that I've gotten recently that are phishing emails. Hang on one second. This particular example, if you look in the center of the page, you'll notice that there's an email there from UPS. And it says it's a UPS survey. Well, if you're like me, you get a lot of stuff from UPS. So I'd like to check it out and see what it is UPS has to say about this survey, because I do have some strong opinions about UPS. Maybe I'd like to share them. So if I look at this slide, if I open this email, here's what I see. Well, I've got a picture of a UPS driver and UPS logo, and it says they have a surprise for the UPS customer. Now, I'm not sure if it shouldn't have been we have a surprise for UPS customers, plural, but okay. So what I did was, between stimulus and response, there's a pause. So what I'm doing is I'm thinking, what should I do with this email? Well, I'm going to check something you can do at home as well. You'll see here it says it came from UPS. And usually there's a small caret that points down. Now you'll notice that this caret points up. The reason this caret points up is because I clicked the down caret and I see this information, which usually isn't visible when we open an email. Now, it's something kind of interesting that I notice. I notice that it says UPS, but it's not actually the UPS address. It's ups.celsakingsley@gmail.com. Now, wouldn't you think that UPS would send emails from ups.com, not celsakingsley@gmail.com? I'm not sure that as huge a company as UPS would be using Gmail. They have their own servers. They have their own domain. So it would be ups.com that were actually from UPS. Now, with that information, do you think I should click on this is a hyperlink. Do you think I should click on that? No, I'm not really sure I would want to do that. Now, navigate back to my program here. I'd like to turn this over to Daniel for a second to talk about this particular email that was received here at Reed Financial a while back. And I'll let him explain this one. Daniel?
So as a financial kind of institution, we are subject to this as well. We're a target, if you will, and we are vigilant with how we handle these as well. This particular email was sent directly to April, and it was from one of our clients. his actual email address, and it says, "Thanks, April. I will need $27,550 to go to TJ Construction LLC. Also, what are the details required for you to transfer the funds to their account?" Signed his name. Looked up kind of past emails, because this is kind of it was out of the ordinary for this client. He had no connection to TJ Construction LLC. Once we called him, which is part of our protocols, we don't just receive an email and reply back. All distributions have to be confirmed by phone call. So when we called him, he confirmed that this was a phishing attempt and a kind of fraud attempt, to be honest. And so we receive, I guess, a couple of these emails every other year or so, but we are a target, and we get emails explicitly. I guess his email was hacked. He had to go through Gmail and consolidate that on his side. But yes, once we confirmed that this was an actual phishing attempt from one of our clients to us. So definitely something we are on the lookout for.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the possibilities for compromise from phishing are almost endless. And there's a website that I have here on the screen, and it's also in your documentation. It's an excellent source of examples of different types of phishing emails. It's Phishing Quiz with Google.com. Like I said, it's already on your paperwork. If you want to take a moment and write that down, it's more than helpful, no problem. We will talk about, as we go along, also this particular information in front here that says HTTPS. We're going to learn what that means and what importance that has to us. But as an example, let's move along to one of the examples that's at this particular website. You'll notice, let me explain something first. It says, "Good day, Poopsie." When you go to this website, it's going to ask you to enter your name and your email address. Well, I don't want to receive any more spam than you do. So I wrote, my name is Poopsie, and I live at poopsie.com, poopsie@AOL.com. So I don't think that I'll ever get any email from it. That's why it says Poopsie. Now, one of the things about this email is it seems to be from a Sharon Mosley. It tells me good day, and it tells me that attached is the 2021 financial activity report for my perusal. And at the bottom, it's got a PDF file attached, and it says 2021 FAR, which I assume is financial activity report. One of the important things, which we wouldn't know, so the website tells us, is up at the top. It says, usually these emails come from Sharon Mosley at westmountschool.org. Now, if we do the drop-down box deal, we will find that it's Sharon.Mosley at westmountdayschool.org, not westmountschool.org. So it's different. Now, the way I got here to this is I chose phishing email, and it gave me the information. And this is how I could tell that things are not quite what they seem to be. Now, if we were all together in a big room and we were having a great time, my question to you would be, how do we respond? Because let's say our child does go to this school. What should we do? I would think that one legitimate answer would be to open up your email vehicle and send Sharon.Mosley at westmountschool.org an email and ask her, did you send me this PDF file? Or if you're very familiar with Sharon Mosley, just give her a call. Maybe she'll invite you to lunch later. And ask her, did you send this? Now, some of you are thinking, if I open a PDF, aren't PDFs innocuous? They don't carry viruses, do they? Well, some of you are familiar with a word called macros. And in different kinds of simple files like Word files, spreadsheets, we can put in something called a macro, which automates some of the things that are inside of the file. So PDF may not be in and of itself a dangerous file, but the macro that may be embedded in it might cause a vulnerability that's in the program that opens the problem. So don't always expect that Word files like .doc or docx or XLS or XLSX, those are all extensions to the files, are just innocuous, and they're never dangerous, because any time that a bad actor can find a way to exploit a vulnerability, which we'll talk about in detail, they're going to do it. Okay, let's find my place. Let's talk about another phishing exploit that actually caused the city of Atlanta a huge amount of money. $2.6 million is typically reported, but it could be as high as $7 million if they paid. In 2018, the city of Atlanta was struck with a ransomware attack. A ransomware attack typically is when a phishing email or some such device is used to place software on a machine that encrypts the information. Those of you familiar with encryption, you know that once the data is encrypted, it's not readable unless you have what's known as a key to unlock it. It's kind of like, and I know this is a poor example, but let's say that two people are talking over the phone and they are talking in Swahili. Well, if you don't know Swahili, then you have no idea what they're saying. Well, encryption is even worse or better because it doesn't matter. No one knows how to decrypt cipher text or type of thing unless they have a key. And so the city of Atlanta was held ransom, pay $51,000 to receive that key to decrypt their information. I'd like to very briefly read you part of an article that covers that. The city of Atlanta was the subject of a massive cyber attack which began in March. The city recognized the attack on March the 22nd and publicly acknowledged it was a ransomware attack. Remember, ransomware is typically we encrypt your data, and unless you pay us, we won't give you the key to decrypt it. It affected 6 million people, according to the article. 6 million people. How many people are in the state of Georgia? Well, in 2018, there was 10.5 million people in the state of Georgia. So 6 million people was over half of the populace of this state that was affected. It shut down utility, parking, and port services. It says, due to Atlanta's national importance as a transportation and economic hub, the attack received wide attention. Everybody heard about it. It was notable for the extent and the duration of the service outages. Many city services were affected by the attack, and city officials were forced to use paper forms. I imagine most of us viewing today can remember paper forms. Some of this data was never. And as the article says, $2.6 million was the cost to the city versus $51,000 to pay off the perpetrators, the bad actors. Now let me aside this for just a second and say that ransomware attacks are happening by the thousands, both you and me and to huge corporations every day. If we click on that particular link or we allow some other avenue of attack, then it can encrypt our information as well. Thousands and thousands of attacks happen and are successful all the time. Why don't we hear about those? Well, think about it for a second. If you are a bank, are you going to tell your people that you had this issue? Now, some of you are smart enough to know that now there's a law that you must report this type of attack. So we will get more information about it. but they don't have to tell us if they paid the ransom. And it's costing $16 trillion this year to recover from these types of accounts. So we know that a lot of these ransomware attacks are being they're gambling that the perpetrators are going to give them the key in order to unlock their data and allow them to get back to business. Is there a guarantee? No. How do we fight that type of thing? How do you and I as a single user do that? How do companies do that? Well, we're going to talk about how to. I'd like to show you, pardon me. Well, I'm going to continue that in a moment. But let me shift our attention to the internet and to social media. I would assume that most of you use social media, perhaps daily. The average American spends 6.5 hours on their computers every day. We're a little below the world average, which is around 7 hours a day. We're getting there. When you use social media, do you put information on there that might be used against you? For example, if someone tried to guess your password, have you ever used, someone asked you what the top 10 cars you've ever used? And you put on the top 10 cars, you know, there's a probability that one of those cars that you listed is something that you use as your password. So we need to understand that when we use social media software for free, we've actually made an agreement with the software supplier, the developer, that they can use our information any way they wish. Nothing on social media is private. As you know, nothing on the internet is totally private. What we need to do is we need to think about what I used to say. Don't say anything that you would be upset if your mama heard that you did it. Think about what you're placing online, because not only is the developer of the software capable to do what's known as data mining your information, but also data mining companies make a fortune doing it. Even people who've never been online before have dossiers that can be made for them. For example, if you go to Spokeo, which some of you have probably been to, it is a data mine. I have a friend that lives in Augusta, in my hometown, and he has never had a computer or a smartphone in his life. If I look at Spokeo, they will find out information about him because of public record. And these data miners continuously mine this information that governments and entities have placed online about us. Can we stop that? Well, we can pay attention to what we've placed on social media and make sure that things such as birth dates, addresses, telephone numbers are not there, which perhaps some of us have that available on those types of things. But as far as creating a dossier against us and knowing about us, it's almost impossible to stop that. There are some ways to do that, and there are some private firms that will help you with that if you are very concerned about what kind of information is online. But it's very almost impossible to actually eradicate yourself from online information. I would suggest that if you're interested in this, you might want to look at this issue of Consumer Reports, which is the February issue. It's on newsstands now. And it tells you how to protect yourself online. And one of the things I found most interesting about it is that it talks about erasing yourself, if you will, from information online that might be able to be used against you. For example, when I go to pick up medicine at my pharmacy, the only thing they ask me is, what's my birth date? Well, my birth date is easily found online. They don't look at my driver's license. They don't check to see, you know, if I really who I say I am. That's the only identifying thing that they use. So if this is of a concern to you, I would suggest you might want to look at this. And I will advise you that the author of the information in the end says that it's almost impossible to do this. And the reason for that is because mayor minors, let's say that you get them to remove the information from their files. Who's to say that 6 months from now they're going to start looking again and renew all your information afresh? It's going to be available for anyone who wants to pay for it. Another thing that has it's of interest with this is yesterday, you may have read this in the AJC. People today are seemingly posting pictures of their COVID vaccination cards. And you will see here on the screen that the AJC, the Atlanta Journal, posted an article that says, don't do that. The Better Business Bureau says, do not do that. The reason for that is because it's your full name, and there again, your date of birth, and also the location where you received it, so that they kind of can get a geographical idea of where you live. It points out that if you want to do this, put a frame around the information, your personal information, so that it doesn't show. I'm sure that if you're like me, you've seen several of our friends on social media post this information, and it's advised. Someone asked, and I'll do this as an aside for a second, about virtual private networks and their use to protect us while we're on the internet. I've got a design here that just briefly will talk about what a virtual private network is. You'll notice that the internet is in the center of this, and there's something called a secure tunnel. Well, this goes back to our old friend encryption. If you want to send information over the internet securely, you can get free VPN software. You can buy VPN software, or you can use certain browsers who have VPN software built in. For example, Opera and Brave are both two browsers offer you VPN. If this is of concern to you, that you want to make sure that everything you do over the network, over the internet, is secure as far as while it travels through the network, you can use this. Now, one thing that you need to be concerned about or aware of is that you are going to be slow, because VPNs require encryption at your end and decryption at the other end, and vice versa. It's going to take some time to have that happen, so you will see a noticeable slowdown. Now let's move to passwords, one of our favorites. Here's the most common passwords in use. I certainly hope that none of you are using any of those items there as your password. Remember that we have been told time and again, use what's known as a complex password. In fact, I want to go back to that Atlanta incident where the ransomware was used and caused such havoc. It wasn't actually a user clicking on a link in an email caused that. It was actually determined upon investigation that the bad actors, who were two Iranians, they have been identified and they've been indicted, but that's as far as it will ever go, used something called a simple password crack. It's available online for no charge, and it does what's called a brute force attack. It just continuously creates passwords until it finds one that works. And they did that by using a user account from the city of Atlanta and simply using the software to guess the password. Once they logged in with this user account, That's when they were able to place the malware, the malicious software, ransomware, into the system that caused so much trouble there. If you are using the same password, I know none of you will, but if you know someone who is using the same password, you might feel like I did recently, 6 months ago. I received an email that asks for money in order to get rid of a password that I had used in the past. Now, it was kind of scary. So I can imagine if someone was able to detect a password that you're using, and it's the same password that you use for your checking and savings accounts, and it's the same password you use for Read Financial's online software, and it's the same password you use for your charge card accounts. That's scary. In fact, recently, a relative of mine bought a new computer and gave away his old one. After he did that, he realized that on his old computer that he got rid of, there was a list file that had all of his usernames and all of his passwords. So we're assisting him at the moment to go through every account he's ever had that he still uses online and change the passwords. If you'd like to continue to use passwords and do them properly, there's a couple of ways to do that. One of them is, here's a website. Now, I apologize for being late on this and not putting it in your information. You can copy this down. It's an excellent website that allows you to understand how to create better passwords. Now, if you use this and you still want to go this on your own, that's great. Make sure that if you do this, write down your passwords on a piece of paper, not on file in your computer. Because if someone gains entry into it, they're going to be able to compromise your system, your accounts. It's hopefully up there long enough for you to write that information down. If you don't want to do that, if you say there's got to be an easier way, yes, there is. We can get password software, password manager software, which is becoming more and more popular these days. You'll see here that this one's called Dashlane, and it tells you can put passwords in their place. And the way all of these systems work is you only have one username and one password. That's called the master key. And what it will do is it will go, with your assistance obviously, to every site that you use, and it will create a beautifully complex password that logs you into that particular site. Now this will work on your tablet, work on your smartphone, work on your computers. The only drawback to this, ladies and gentlemen, is if you forget your master credentials, your master username, and your master. Because if you do that, you will have to manually go to every one of those sites, which hopefully you keep a list of those, and say, forgot password, and create one on your own. Now, I believe Dashlane is of no charge, but we also have RoboForm. Now, when I shot this screen view of RoboForm, you're probably not surprised that on my Facebook feed, RoboForm sent me a advertisement today. And we're going to talk about how that happens in just a moment. But you notice this particular one is for, has a price. It's $1.39 a month, and for family, I think it's $3.99. So you could use this or some of the others. Some are free, some are for charge. Now, while we're looking at this, I'd like to also point out something to you down at the bottom. We had a question about cookies, not the kind that the Cookie Monster we want, but the kind that are used in computing for browsers. What are cookies? Well, you'll notice down here at the bottom, it says that they're used to give you the best experience on our website. Wow, well, everybody's for the best experience, right? So we can say got it, and that will give them the approval to place cookies on our machines. Now, you may have figured out, like I did, that I didn't have to check that got it for them to put a cookie on the laptop that I shot this from, because since I got that Facebook ad this morning, they had already placed a cookie there. And these are called tracking cookies. Some can be as simple as going to a site and saying, I live in the southeastern United States, and I'd like for you to remember my username when I log on. Pretty simple. But they become more and more sophisticated as time goes on. That's why it's interesting that when you see a website and you might follow a link for something that's of interest to you, that all of a sudden, for the next 6 months, you'll get advertisements from that particular company that you visited. Here's another example. It's also a password manager by Norton, which I'm sure most of you have heard of before. But this one is particularly interesting because they have a large text at the bottom, and I can either agree for the cookies, or I can say, no, take me to the settings. This is a great example of how sophisticated cookies can be. This is the next page after I clicked on show me more information. You'll notice there's a performance and security, performance and functionality button, social media button, analytics button, advertising button. Well, some of these we can pretty easily guess what Norton's going to do with it. If we choose the advertising button, we're going to get a bunch of advertising for Norton after we leave this site. We're going to get a lot of social media interaction for it if we leave that particular button on. The performance and functionality says, it kind of tells Norton how we're doing. You know, is our website, you know, clear to you? Is it easily navigable? And the analytics seems to be sort of the same thing. I would suggest, if you'd like, you can predict on this particular site, turn those off if you wish. However, it does tell you here at the top, without these cookies, certain functionality may become unavailable. And that's what you will experience if you decide not to use cookies. In and of themselves, they are pretty innocuous, but this is how information is spread about what things that you see on the internet. Can you remove cookies? Yes, certainly you can. Most antivirus programs have the functionality to take your cookies off, as well as any browser. If you go into the settings for your browser, you can take those out. Now, you probably will get less advertising connected to the things you do if you delete your cookies. But as I said, you probably have to do a little bit more work. Now, what does that remind us of? Remember when we drew the line and we put convenience on one side, and we put security on the other? Well, we're going to be a little less convenient because we moved along the continuum to a little more security. If that is something that you can accept and you can move along that line towards more security, you might want to think about periodically getting rid of your cookies. If you have questions about that, we have a question and answer period at the end that we'll be glad to address any about that. And by the way, you can't use beef stew as a password because it's not strong enough. Now, I'm at a disadvantage because hopefully you laughed at that. But since I'm here and you're there, and we're not in the same room, I'm not sure. So I'm just going to pretend that you guys really got a kick out of that.
I laughed.
Thank you.
You got me too, Joseph.
Okay, my next subject is software updates. I'm sure that all of you have seen at some time or another the question to say, you know, you got updates. Some of my friends on Facebook have this strange idea that they shouldn't do these software updates. And I'd like to address that for any of you that feel that way or have friends that do. Be a good neighbor and tell them, this is the reason we do software updates. Software, when it comes out to us, quite frankly, is buggy. It's imperfect. It's imperfect to the max. It does work, but a lot of the code that's in any piece of software is got issues that can be utilized by bad actors. They are vulnerabilities. And as we talked earlier about opening a PDF or a Word file or whatever, if that vulnerability has been discovered, we can use a macro to invoke it, cause it to do some things we don't want it to do, or many of the other thousands of vulnerabilities that are in software today. In fact, some of you might remember Windows 2000. For some of you, that may bring up bad memories. It was an operating system produced by Microsoft, actually around the year 2000. When it was released, researchers found that there were 6,000 known vulnerabilities in that operating system. The first update, or we called it a service pack, fixed 2,000 of those. So gee, guys, there's only 4,000 left. These are what are known as known vulnerabilities. We're going to talk about what unknown vulnerabilities do presently. If you want to check for updates, if it asks you to do them, please do so. But even if it doesn't, one of the smartest things you can do for your computer is to do your own updates. Now, what I did to get to the screen that you see here on a Windows machine is I pointed my mouse at the bottom left-hand corner where it says Start. Now, instead of left-clicking, I right-clicked. How about that? You can right-click as well. And you can go to something called Settings. When you go to Settings, you'll see the screen that I have in front of me. And Updates and Security is right at the bottom. The last icon available. I would suggest that you do this at least twice a month. Go to Update and Security and click on it, and you'll end up here. Now, my machine says at the top here, you're up to date. Woohoo! Now, yours may quite well say that. Do not believe what it says. Do this yourself. Do yourself and your device a huge favor and check for updates. You will usually find that there are updates available that have not yet populated onto your machine, and you need to install those because these are, as we now know, patches that are going to close vulnerabilities that can be used to exploit you and your machine. You will notice here that there's an optional update. I don't care about optional updates because the software developer has decided those are nice to have, but they're not totally necessary. If you wish to install them and get added functionality, you can do that. And you're saying, well, Joseph, how do I know what added functionality I would get? Well, if you take a look at the end of this line, you'll see it KB and some numbers. Now, if you're the curious type, KB stands for knowledge base. Every update that's released has a knowledge base number assigned. You can copy that knowledge base number, go to Microsoft and search for that KB number, and it will tell you everything that it will do for you. These days, different from the way it's been since Microsoft has really provided software, is that Windows 10 is a long-lived operating system. It is certainly not the last one that they will ever come out with, but it is going to still be viable for quite a while. Microsoft has changed their viewpoint on operating systems. As you may remember, Windows 10 was free in the beginning. a gift to those of us who use the Windows platform. What they're doing is they are providing a lot of functional updates along with vulnerability patches. And this seems to be able to, it's going to continue for a while. So not only are you not patching your vulnerabilities, but in many of the updates included with the patches are additional functionality that you may see, because Windows will sometimes talk you through, well, hey, there's some new things, new features. Here's what they are if you'd like to see them. So please, please do this. Your tablets, if you go to Help on your tablet and go to either About or go to Software Updates, you will be able to see and install whatever is available. Now, how about your smartphone? We're going to talk about that presently. At this point, I would say any questions, but I'm just going to keep. Antivirus programs. Hopefully, all of you have one, or you're relying upon the software program that's included with Windows, which is Windows Defender. Hopefully, that's activated on your machine. There are free software antivirus programs, and there are ones that are paid for. Kaspersky is one of the free ones. Obviously, most of us heard of Norton and McAfee, rather. I prefer McAfee, just something I have used all my life in my career, and I tend to lean towards that one. If you have one of those, make sure that it is up to date and it is active, because they expire. This is known as software as a service. You have to pay for it every year. Some of you remember back in the old days when you bought a copy of Office. First copy of Office ever was Office 97. And there was Office 2000. Then there was Office blah, 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 blah. But once you bought them, you didn't have to pay anymore. Now, Office is software as a service, or SaaS, just like the antivirus program. You have to pay a fee every year. Now, some of you probably are doing some wishful thinking, and you're saying, well, it's expired, but it's still working. I would submit to you that that's probably not the best thing to do. Don't assume that it's still going to protect you, since you haven't paid for the next year's of service. I want to do that. Now, I want to go back and talk about one other thing that I need to find this. Here. When you're using software, antivirus software, you're going to get the benefit of it trying to search out all the time for secure sites for you. And paid software, antivirus software, will sometimes tell you, hey, don't go to that particular website because it may be dangerous. I have a few here. I will find presently. From McAfee. In addition to simply doing antivirus, which of course is a huge part of what you need the program for, it also has additional information on the page. I'm not sure this is available on antivirus that is free. Some of you who use Kaspersky or some other free might be able to ring in at the end and tell us if this is available. But on McAfee, we have something that's additional to the antivirus called Web Advisor. We talked earlier about not navigating to websites that we're not familiar with. Always tempting to go to somewhere new, browsing the web. But a lot of those places have embedded malicious software or malware that can download on your machine. In this particular instance, McAfee, which this happened to me yesterday, and so I took a screenshot of it, tells me you might want to think twice about going to this particular website because it's suspicious. This is a nice piece of functionality for those of you who say, well, I'm just going to willy-nilly go to any website I want to. This might be something that helps you to think twice, to use that pause, say, maybe I shouldn't do it. If there are any questions about this, like I said, be sure and ask me. Now, let's move on to backups. Backups, in my opinion, are one of the best ways to preserve your crucial information. Hopefully, all of you do some kind of backup. I would like to venture an opinion about the Atlanta ransomware attack. The best way that they could have handled that, because their front-end security was so bad that they could use a user account, just guess the password and log in to place the software in there, was to have had periodic backups of all that information, some of which they've never been able to recover. They could have cleansed and sanitized the machines, taken the ransomware off, and restored their backup. And they would have obviously lost some information. The majority of it would still be there. And that's the same way with you and me. In the old days, hard drives in computers were commonplace. They're mechanical devices, and they have platters inside with magnetic coating where the data is stored. Even if the machine breaks, many times we were able to recover the information off those drives. These days, with the advent of what's known as SSDs or solid state drives, it's just like the memory that's in your smartphone or in your tablet. There's no mechanical device to try to recover your information from on those anymore. And more physical mechanical hard drives are being replaced by solid state drives or SSDs. So it's even more important to have a backup. Now, there are several ways to do backups. Some of us back up what's known as the cloud. Where exactly is the cloud? Where exactly is my data? Well, we don't know. The cloud began because tons of organizations had unused disk space on their machines. And they consolidate that information and allow us, sometimes free and sometimes for a price, to store our data there. But personally, I have a concern with placing my personal information, my financial information, whatever, somewhere where I have no idea where it is. So the alternative for me, and perhaps you could give this consideration, is to use a device that you can keep in your own home. Most of you have seen, and some of you probably have, hard drives that are external. They connect to your machine with a universal serial bus, a USB connector. That's the way I back up my information. On all of my devices, I turn off cloud storage, and that's just me, because I don't want it extraneous to my home. If you don't have that concern, that's your personal decision. But I know where my data is. It's on that external hard drive. No matter which way you store your data, you need to make sure that you can recover. I've seen this in so many organizations where I've gone in to do audits, security audits. They have backups out the wazoo, but they never tested it to see if it worked. When will they test it? They will test it when they need it. If it doesn't work when they need it, they're simply out of luck. So any time that you have data stored, you want to recover it periodically. Place it in a folder on your desktop or your laptop. Let that information be recovered from the device, and then go and look at a few of the documents, open up some files of that precious pictorial family history that you have, pictures that you never want to be lost. Take a look at that information. Make sure that you can recover it should the time come. The last topic I'd like to talk about is a topic on a device that many people say is where most of our precious information is stored these days, and that's a smartphone. How do we back up a smartphone, by the way? Well, because the information stored in a smartphone is similar to using a solid state device, it's stored in a manner that we probably couldn't recover it, is that it dictates that we use cloud storage. So, those pictures will have to be there for this particular device. Now, iPhones, fortunately, if you have one of those, you can actually back that up on a laptop or desktop. But for us Android users, cloud is about our only alternative. And so until something changes, we must use that. But let's take a look at smartphones, see some of the things that we can use to protect ourselves on those. Number one, use the best logon security available. Kanye West, some of you may know that gentleman, was sitting in front of President Trump's desk in the White House a couple of years ago. And of course, there were plenty of cameras there. And we actually saw Kanye unlock his smartphone. He used 6 zeros. That's probably not the kind of security that you and I need in order to protect information on our smartphones. These days, if you have a newer smartphone, which I just purchased one a couple months ago, it has facial recognition, it has fingerprint identification, it has a key phrase, numbers we can punch in now. It only has 4 numbers. I would have much rather enjoyed 6 numbers or more to have more security. My wife's iPhone requires 6 numbers, which is more secure in my opinion. But whatever kind of situation you have with your smartphone as far as login security, please use it. I enjoy the facial recognition because it works well, as opposed to in the past when facial security was a joke. This particular phone works very well with that. Okay, our next thing is enable tracking functionality. Pretty much all current smartphones have software that can allow you to use another device to track your phone. My Samsung smartphone has a website called Track My Device. It's Samsung. And I can go there and I can tell, to within 20 feet of where my cell phone is. Have you got that enabled on your particular phone? If not, you might consider doing that. Whatever brand of phone you have, if you'll navigate to that phone's manufacturer's website and search for phone tracking, you can see if there's a piece of software built into the phone that you can use to install this type of software, because it's really great. Another thing is that once we get our smartphone, we want to put all kinds of cool apps on it. I'm a musician, so I have an app on my phone that is a tuner. It allows me to tune my instrument to the correct tones that it needs. Certain others, like restaurants that I go to. Anytime we install an application, we need to be thinking about that sound like it's from a source that's trusted. For example, did it come from the App Store? Did it come from the Amazon store? It's something that's recognized, because even though smartphones are at the moment a little less prone to attack than some of our other devices. That is growing because bad actors realize there's a ton of information that we carry around. Like I said, for some folks, there's an incredible amount of valuable information on their smartphone. If you go to a website that seems, remember, we need to think about it, that seems like, I'm not sure this seems legitimate, I would suggest that you probably pass over installing that on your smartphone. Be cautious of Wi-Fi connections. Many of us go to locations like doctor's offices or coffee houses, restaurants that have provided us with Wi-Fi. And these are open systems. And what I mean by that is that anybody can connect it. All you need is the SSID number, which is service set identifier. That's like if you go to a doctor's office, the name of the doctor's office, name of the restaurant, and you need a password. That in and of itself, by the way, is okay. But if you log into a local Wi-Fi and it asks you for anything other than that, I mean, why would it ask you for your name or perhaps your email address, something of that nature? That's not necessary to log into. So I would consider not doing that. And many people say, don't do any kind of financial transactions on your smartphone, especially while you're connected to a Wi-Fi connection that you're not really fully aware of. And that is good advice. What I do ask you to look for, though, is that these days, more and more websites are using a secure encrypted connection between your device and there. And how can you find that out? Well, earlier on, I put hang on. This on there, and I said we'd talk about it. If you see this as part of your URL, your Universal Resource Locator, which is information we type in to get to a certain website, this stands for Hypertext Transport Protocol. And the first part is not important. That S is important because that means there's encryption going on from your machine or your smartphone or your tablet to the other end, wherever else you're connecting. If that's the case, then you can probably be safe using an open Wi-Fi connection because from your machine, from your device to your destination is being encrypted. So it's not quite as dangerous as it used to be in the old days. However, if this S is not there, and of course in some new browsers, it might even show you this. It might say secure or not secure. I think the new Edge browser does that. It shows this in the address bar, but it also tells you if it's secure or not secure. I would feel much more comfortable doing banking or buying something with my credit card if I see this, because there are being protections given to you that's going to protect your information. Most smartphones have the capability to do file encryption. So information that you store on your phone, like you've written down your passwords on your phone or things of that nature, you want to use file encryption so that they're not readable except for you because you know how to log in, and that will decrypt the information for you. And lastly, protect your phone from unauthorized use or theft. We're in the South, and many Southern folks are trusting individuals. I mean, that's our culture. someone wants to use our phone, perhaps we'd say, yeah, sure. We unlock it for you. Don't show them your passphrase to get in. But is that really the smart thing to do? Think about that when you're asked by someone else, that perhaps you don't know to use your phone, because they can always be fleet of foot. And if you're like me, I'm not quite the runner I used to be. Also, theft. Try to safeguard your phone from theft as best you can. And remember, item 2 is very important, because that allows you to be able to track it. Now, with my particular new phone, and I mentioned to you that I can go to a website and track it, I can also lock it so that none of the passwords, pass numbers or whatever, will work again until I set them up again. I also have the option, of deleting everything that's on my smartphone. And if there were something there on my smartphone that I truly am concerned about, that might be an option that I would consider. Now, I know that there's nothing on my smartphone that is that sensitive that I would need to do that. I would think that locking it so that no one can get into it until they bring it back to me and I reset it up, would work. But there again, this is your decision. Remember that timeline. We said the security on one end and the convenience on the other. That's always what plays into being secure with our devices. If we want to be more secure, it's going to cost us in time and effort. If we want to look at that particular email and scrutinize it a little bit more closely than we've been doing recently, because things are so commonplace these days, it's going to take us more time, and we all know time is valuable. But if something bad happens, we're not going to feel very well about having been the one that did the action that caused that malware to be loaded or whatever to happen. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to the moderators and give everyone an opportunity to ask any questions that they might have for me, or clarification for anything that I have covered.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was really, really great. I learned even more than the last time I listened to you speak. So thank you so much. We have a bunch of questions that came in throughout. So I'm going to ask probably like 3 or 4 of them, and then hopefully we can reach out to the rest that if we don't get a chance to ask all of them. So on the topic of cookies, how do you remove cookies from iPhones? If you want to talk to the Android users too, I'm sure they would appreciate knowing that too.
Okay, on either iPhones or on Android devices, you can go to your settings. You'll be able to find out, obviously with each particular phone, this may be located in a little bit different place. But if you can't easily find the setting where it will remove your cookies, as I said earlier, my smartphone is smarter than I am, to be honest with you. And so what I did when I first got it was it's Samsung. So I went to the Samsung website and I looked up my particular model number. And it has a manual, which of course, no one gives you that when you get your phone. You have to go dig it up. And that particular manual tells you specifically where to go in order to do that particular function. So not knowing exactly, I don't personally own any iPhones. That is the realm of my beautiful wife, Aylin, who is not with me today. I always give her those Apple questions because she is my Apple maven. So she could tell you in 2 seconds flat. What I can do is advise you that you need to simply find online the particular manual. It is published for your phone, and you can find the information on how to do that.
Perfect. So you have a divided household,
Yes.
Android
Yes,
and Apple.
we go both ways.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so we have a question, and I've actually experienced this as well. When you download an app on your smartphone and it asks for permission to access other apps like your email account or Facebook for whatever reason, is that a security threat in your?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
most definitely. I have downloaded apps on my phones. I can't even tell you how long I've had a phone, but it's been quite a while, probably like most of us. And I've said to myself, well, gee, that looks like it would be an interesting app to have to use on mine. And then it begins to ask for all kinds of permissions.
Mhm.
It asks for, can I access your GPS system on your phone? Can I access your contacts? Can I access your email? And I'm thinking, why?
Right.
Here again, it's a question of being cognizant, of not just saying, yeah. Because in this modern, fast-paced world, we're used to that. So as I mentioned in the beginning, let's don't just gloss over a lot of these things that we see and save ourselves a lot of heartache by paying a little bit more attention. And many times I have said, Joseph, this is not worth allowing this piece of app to access all of that. Why? I just can't understand why it would need that. That would be like that tuner app that I mentioned earlier, wanting to know my GPS coordinates.
Right.
That's not necessary for me to tune my instrument. I would not allow those kinds of things to happen. If you really want the app, what I might suggest is most smartphone manufacturers have chat on their main websites. I would navigate to the website, and I would do a chat session, and I would ask them what their thoughts are, because they are intimately associated with their smartphones and the apps that run on them. And that would be, to me, a viable way to determine whether or not, if it's that important to you, whether or not to install that.
Okay.
And I just want to dovetail on that, Abby. I'm sorry for interjecting here for just a moment. This might be something that would be good for us to send out and follow up, Joseph. I know we're short on time here, but the question that I would have to dovetail on that is that I'm sure that many of the people on this webinar this evening likely have done that before. They have shared those permissions. And so now they're probably sitting there going, uh-oh, maybe I should not have done that. Do you have any guidance for the people who might be sitting there at home thinking that right now and wondering what they might have accidentally?
Yes, I very much do. We are the most intelligent form of life on Earth. All the other forms of life share, as we do, something called instinct. But human beings are the only species that consistently ignores our instinct. No other animal on the face of the planet does that. And we have this instinct for a reason. When things are not feeling right, many times they are not right. And fortunately, if you're talking about the cell phone apps, simply go into your settings and look at the apps list, and you can uninstall anything that you have a concern about. Now, your memory is probably better than mine if you remember a lot of the permissions some of those apps ask for. But there are many apps, I'm sure, or many smartphones that you don't use. And so I would remove those as a matter of course. I would take those off. And in the future, anything that I would install, I would be very cognizant of what kind of permissions they ask for. I hope that answers that question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Good stuff. All right, let's see, another question. Okay, so this is about updates, which you talked quite a bit about. So this is a question about automatic updates. So I know that sometimes those happen in the worst times. Usually that's the time that your computer wants to update. So should we set up automatic updates maybe at a certain time, like, I don't know, in the middle of the night or something like that? Is that what you would recommend?
Absolutely. Automatic updates, in my experience over the years that I've been in the business, it's not foolproof, but it's certainly helpful. And yes, you can adjust the time that updates are installed, and you're in the middle of the night, unless you're a night owl. In that case, do it at noon. It's a good time. It's a good way to do that. However, it is bad form to think that automatic updates is going to take care of your machine, because in the end, only you are responsible for those devices that you own. And so to kind of abdicate that responsibility is not a good thing. And the reason I say that is because I can't tell you how many times that I have worked with users and I have gone to the update. I mean, this is just part of what I do when I look at someone's machine. I go to the updates and I click on check. And I can, 99 out of 100 times, I can find updates that have not been installed that are very important to be installed. That's why I recommended every 2 weeks that you do that yourself. I mean, even more often if you're paranoid. And in software programs that are not like part of the operating system, because if you own a Microsoft device, for example, it's only going to do Microsoft software. And most of us have other software packages that are not written by Microsoft. And I'm glad you brought that up, because those also need updating. What you need to do is you need to go and open that particular program. Let's say it's an Acrobat program. And go to Help, and either in the Help drop-down menu, you will either find Check for Updates or you will find About. Everything has About. When you go to About, many times they place Check for Updates under the About choice. Some are, for example, I use a program called TeamViewer, and it's a free program where I can remotely connect to other people's computers over the internet. It has to have a current piece of TeamViewer installed on their machine before I can connect to my machine, because it's not backward compatible. I have to have the current version. If you go to Help, there is actually a choice that says Check for Updates. That's very important. That's where you get those vulnerabilities closed by those manufacturers. And that is not always something that is automatic in those kind of applications.
That was going to be my question too. The updates are so important because probably all the time the software companies are finding vulnerabilities in their software, and they're correcting them, and that's what the updates, part of what the updates are for, right?
Right. When we talked about software managers, and we said, some are free and some are fee-based. The general perception is that a fee-based product, software product, has more support behind it, has more continuing support. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not the one to ultimately answer that kind of esoteric question.
Right.
But any piece of software that you have, try to find where the choice is to do the updates and do them. Okay. I mean, anything, the backup and the updates are just two huge, crucial pieces that move along that continuum away from convenience towards security by spending a little time to do that, and you will be rewarded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the message that I got from this, I like the line put down the paper, convenience on one side, security on the other, is to not trade my security for a little bit more convenience. Often taking another step and maybe not the most convenient option is going to be the most secure one, and just making sure that everybody stays vigilant, just like we would do, walking down the street or whatever, but in this new virtual, everything's virtual these days. This is even more important, than ever. And I think that something that you had talked about in the beginning, we're going to stay virtual for maybe forever. A lot of people are. So this is incredibly important. Thank you so much. The last time, I think it was in early 2019 when you spoke to our group, and virtually every day, you know, we do a lot of things virtually online and things like that. I've thought about the message and utilize the things that you've talked about and taught, you know, virtually every day. I mean, I'm either on my computer or on my cell phone, you know, every single day, like everybody else. So it's a wonderful message. There are also 3 resources at the bottom of that you provided at the bottom of the handout with the definitions. One of them is a phishing quiz. So what it does is it takes you through, you can use a fake name, Poopsie. I'm sure you wouldn't mind if they use that name. And you could use a fake name, fake email, and you can actually go through some examples of phishing attempts, and you can choose whether you think they're phishing attempts or whether you think they're legitimate. And I went through the quiz and I learned quite a bit. So it's a really, really good resource. There we go. Thank you very much. So that's the first one right here. And with that, so this is excellent information, and it's even more, you know, beneficial if we are doing something about it, being proactive about protecting ourselves. So we're going to encourage that. We have a book that was recommended by you, Mr. Tollison, called Sheep No More. So it's got 5 stars on Amazon. That means it's excellent. We all know that. Amazon is the source for stars. So it's got 5 stars on Amazon with over 1,000 reviews. It was written by a former U.S. Navy SEAL and an FBI special agent, and it is the definitive safety Bible, essentially. How to think like an attacker and therefore be able to protect yourself in all kinds of different situations. So it's a wonderful book. We're going to give out the book. We're going to ship it to folks that let us know that they've completed the phishing quiz. So it's on the honor system. We're not going to, you know, hack into your computer or whatever and make sure that you've done it. So just let us know that you've completed it. We're going to send out an email that has a link to our website. You can send in a message to our website. We have a message there that you can just type in and send us a message, or you can send it to service@reedfinancialgroup.net. Just let us know. You can say done, and we'll shoot you out a copy of that book. We, of course, the addresses for our clients, we already have those. If you're a guest, then just include your address that you'd like for it to be sent to in that email, and we'd be happy. Also, there is the second resource there is a surveillance self-defense. So it's tips, tools, and how-tos for safer online communications. So you can use that if you want to learn more. And then there is a security planner, which is from Consumer Reports, which is a great resource. Keeping your data secure with a personalized plan. So they'll run through basically a personalized plan for yourself, how to stay safer online. So those are some action tools that
I'd like to mention on that particular one. I apologize for interrupting.
No, please do.
Usually things from Consumer Reports cost money, and that particular that is an excellent resource. I would suggest that everyone who's with us today and share this with your friends. That is a wonderful. I was amazed at the degree of depth that goes into, and that is a wonderful resource that I highly recommend.
Perfect, wonderful. Anything else you would like to add or finish off on? Thank you so much. This has been, like I said, fantastic.
I would certainly like to thank Reed Financial, and I would like to thank each of you. I wish that I could personally look you in the eye and thank you for being with us. Having stood up and taught for over 30 years, it's quite a different experience when you can't see your audience. And so I hope that your experience was good, and hopefully I'll get to meet you in person someday, and thank you for being a participant in our broadcast.
Thank you so much.
Everybody, for joining us. And you will get that email just as a reminder for completing that phishing quiz, as Abby mentioned, in just a few minutes here after we disconnect. And it will have both of those methods where you can just reach out and let us know that you've completed that quiz, and we'll get that book out to you. So thank you so much, Joseph, as always. And thank you all for joining us this evening. Have a great one, everybody.
Thank you all for joining us.
Bye-bye.